So the AP poll for week two is now out. Ohio State leading the race. Penn State stays at number two. LSU jumped to three. Georgia four. Miami takes a huge leap to five. Oregon six. Texas falls all the way down to seven. Clemson falls four spots to eight. Notre Dame nine. And South Carolina 10. I pretty much agree with all of this list. I probably wouldn't have put Miami above Oregon and maybe even Texas. I think Texas lost to Ohio State is still one of the probably the best loss anybody will have all season. But can you give me your thoughts on South Carolina entering the top 10 and then Miami entering the top five?
I like that Miami moved up. I think they're probably a little high as to where they are. Now, they beat a good Notre Dame team, yet to be seen how good that Notre Dame team actually is. So I think Notre Dame should be down in that 13, 14, 15 spot. Um, we won't really find out a whole lot about them for a bit. So they play Texas A&M, so we'll see that. They'll play USC, which will always be a fun game. But I'm not sure like how those teams even are right now. And so their strength of schedule is going to be a little interesting. And they had an opportunity to make a statement, and they didn't. And Miami did, which is great, and that's why they're in the top five. But they're probably a little high. South Carolina, fantastic for them to get the recognition they deserve. Last year, they were a team where everybody was kind of like, hey, could this team get into the playoffs? And if they do,
Right.
watch out. And they didn't, but they kept that momentum and they turned out to be like a better team than they were last year, which is a very difficult thing to do in this college football landscape.
So Oregon is right at number six, and they're actually above Texas, which is probably the one disagreement that I have at this AP poll top 10. I think Texas losing to Ohio State. Ohio State was the best team in the country. I just think on paper and with the hype that Texas got that number one spot. Now, South Carolina in the top 10, I think that's strictly based off what people are projecting Lenore Sellers to be this season.
Mhm.
He is a Heisman hopeful, and I think for him to be in a final New York Heisman discussion at top three, they're going to have to be in that top 10 ranking. They have a difficult schedule. It is the SEC, and for him to
Mhm.
win the Heisman means that he's probably going to have to put the team on his back, which I expect him to be able to do. Now, Penn State, who we haven't seen, LSU, who beat up on a Clemson team who might be overrated,
Mhm.
those spots are fine with me. I think Ohio State, Penn State, and LSU, and maybe Georgia. I think that is the upper class of college football right now. I think there's a clear drop off when you talk about these other teams. Texas can jump back in that if they start to win again, but we'll see what happens when they play Oklahoma in two
Mhm.
weeks. SMU at number 17. I like Iowa State at 16. I think they're a little bit better than what they've been getting credit for. That sloppy game against Kansas State didn't really
Yeah.
help. I hope they never play games in Ireland again. Love the country, but the field and the rain, it just wasn't a good mix. Michigan at 15, and like I said, they're one slot behind Florida State at 14. Florida State could be in that 10 spot, and they definitely should probably be higher than Arizona State and Illinois, who are a couple of spots ahead of them. That victory, I guess the AP poll doesn't really want to jump the gun too much
Mhm.
because if Florida State comes out and looks flat and they got a top 10 ranking after beating Bama, who Bama could be well on their way outside of the top 25 in a couple of weeks. They
Mhm.
don't, I guess they don't want to give them too much credit. The Florida and Arizona State at 12 and 13 is very interesting to me because if you look at how the playoff can play out at the end of the season, you can make the playoff without making your conference championship game. And if
Right.
you have two losses and those two losses come in conference and now you're at the 9, 10, or 11 or 12 spot and you don't have to play in the ACC or Big Ten championship game, that could be the best spot for a lot of these teams. And so I wonder if some of these teams are going to be okay with losing certain games. Obviously, in college football, you can only lose about three games max this year without making the playoffs. And so
Mhm.
teams that are getting votes like a Mizzou who are going to see against KU, who preseason was on some top 25 list, not AP. And you have Texas A&M, who is kind of a big question mark. Ole
Mhm.
Miss, another big question mark. Indiana's kind of trying to fight for their reputation to kind of stay alive as this new profound football school. I like this entire list. Obviously, this is not going to stay the same, but in this
Mhm.
top 10, who do you think is going to fall out here soon? And who do you think is the bit, or who do you think is the most vulnerable for an upset?
So there are a lot of things you touched on. I think that Clemson probably falls out. On defense, they pass the eye test. On offense, they don't. And I think they're going to win a lot of games, 17 to 10, 24 to 17. Maybe they score 30 points a couple times, but their offense is very, very flat. And so I don't know what to expect from them. I could see them getting upset. I also see them going and losing just one more game and being a 10 and 2 and getting into the playoffs and being a
Right.
solid team. So they're interesting. Notre Dame is a team where I think South Carolina could jump them, Florida could jump them, Florida State could jump them. So they could naturally just fall out of the top 10 by teams just like playing and winning games. I think if when Ohio State, Penn State match up, like let's say they're still 1 and 2, like those two wouldn't change much. So I think they could just get leapfrog a little bit. So those teams could fall outside of the top 10. I want to go back to some of the things you said. You mentioned the Big 12 is kind of the name. Arizona State, Iowa State. Utah has a chance to be really good again. They get like out of the having the sixth, seventh year quarterback, the 6 year, I think it was. And so we'll see what they look like. They're really strong week one. But the Big 12 has a chance where I think the committee recognized this last year, where it was like where you finish ranked is how you got in. So they did a weird thing with SMU, kind of put them in a spot where they're not necessarily a good enough team to be in the playoff, but because they kind of earned it, I guess, by not losing, they got placed there. So I do think that you're going to see the Big 12 or the ACC kind of sitting there. And we'll see if like one of the if two conferences can get three teams in. I think the SEC has a chance. The Big Ten, it's looking like has a chance, but maybe like the Big 12 or the ACC has a chance to put three teams in as well.
My biggest spotlight coming up in these next couple weeks is definitely going to be Florida, not only because DJ Lagway is an interesting prospect, another guy who's could be a Heisman hopeful. He's only a sophomore, so we're going to have another year of him at least. They play South Florida this week, and then they play Miami, Texas A&M, LSU,
Mhm.
Texas, all in a row. And
Yeah.
if they can go out of that gauntlet with at least just one loss or it's split it 2-2. I think they're in great shape because those could be the only two losses they have all year. Now, if they go through that and win, and it's going to say a lot about DJ Lagway and the weapons that he has. But Florida's sitting at 13 right now with the toughest schedule probably in the country, at least in those four game stretch.
Yeah.
Who knows? Either they're going to end up inside the top eight or they're going to fall all the way out of the top 25. And they have to really do some damage to USF, who looks like a decent squad. And they beat the crap out of Boise State. So they're going to be
Mhm.
coming in red hot and a lot of confidence. Illinois, who I think 100% deserves to be in the top 15 starting the season. Luke Altmaier, who we'll discuss in a second, who's a great NFL prospect, is
Mhm.
going to be going against Darian Mensah. Is kind of unproven, but is a really good quarterback himself. So let's kind of jump out of this AP top 25. Like you said, I think Utah definitely a sleeper. And then Texas Tech is another one who is kind of paying to be in that spot pretty much.